We have for you a little bit of a national perspective on the Eagles in the NFC East. Russell Baxter writes for Bleacher Report. He's probably one of the best followers, in my opinion, on Twitter as well. Is always a overly opinionated guy. Does a very good job for Bleacher and on Twitter, and we'll bring him on. How you doing today?
I'm doing terrific. Getting ready
now
to
is the time to get 5 grand.
make the big leap in Times Square tonight. That's not a big ball. That'll be me.
Well, you listen. Hey, everyone's got their thing, right?
Hey, it's once a year. Next year, I get a little extra time to prepare for it as well because it's a leap year, so it's 366.
See, you're thinking ahead. I love it. So, obviously, the big thing right now here in this market is the firing of Chip Kelly. You had made some comments throughout the year talking about Chip and different things with the Eagles. So, first of all, give me what your initial reaction was to Chip Kelly being fired and where you think how the Eagles got to this point.
Well, I mean, I can only, go between the lines here. First off, I always kind of questioned why Chip Kelly was given the power that he was given. Not the fact that a head coach can't have that, but a head coach with only 2 years under his belt in the NFL. I think it's like a quarterback. You don't get in control of the offense 2 years in. You wait 5 or 6 years. And, don't you have to get to know the personnel around the NFL before you start making changes on your own personnel? So in this day and age of salary cap, you don't see the Jimmy Johnsons and the Bill Walshes before there was a salary cap and before there was free agency being able to do all those things. I think it's just a lot to ask of one person. So here you're giving this power to somebody who's barely scratched the surface in terms of his NFL career. So coach-wise, when you have to concentrate on more than one thing than just your coaching, Josh, I think that's where you get yourself in trouble. And you look at some of the decisions he made, and I think the one that probably bothers me the most, and by the way, I was at the game on Saturday. I was there working for CBS. I don't understand how you trade away the guy who led the league in rushing in 2013 and then bring in the guy who led the league in rushing in 2014 and don't know how to use him.
How much of that, you just mentioned the fact that he hasn't been in the NFL long enough, how much of that was just him not understanding what it means to evaluate players at the NFL level?
Well, I just think I think that has to play a big part of it. And my guess is for the Eagles to pull the plug on him with one game to go must have been some sort of conversation. Again, I'm only guessing, so I don't, Chip, we want you to do this. Chip, we don't want you to do that. And somewhere along the way, there must have been a defiance or, no, that's not what I want to do. Okay? I mean, that's the only, unless he walked into Jeffrey Lurie's office and Jeffrey Lurie said, I've had enough, that's it. There's only two alternatives when you let a coach go with one game to play. It doesn't happen a lot. It does happen. Okay? I've seen it happen before. I believe it happened with Brian Billick in Baltimore. I believe it happened with Mike Singletary in San Francisco. Not around for the last game, but, we're all sitting there. Listen, I have to tell you what the air is down there. There were a lot of people who were saying, and I can say a lot because I heard a lot, well, Chip Kelly's going to leave maybe after 3 years. He can go back to college and get any job he wants. I don't think anybody expected this. I don't think anybody expected the Eagles to pull the plug with one game to go.
We're talking to Russell Baxter here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennick filling in for Mike Gill. Let's talk about what the outside of the Philadelphia area perspective is, because you cover a lot of the NFL as a whole. What is the perspective of the Eagles moving forward now?
Well, I think there's could be a number of proven candidates out there, given what the landscape will be like on Monday, Josh. They like to call Monday after the season Black Monday, which I don't understand. I'm going to segue for a second here. How come on Black Friday you get to get things, and on Black Monday you get rid of things?
I think it's just people have different ideas of what black means to them.
I'm just curious. On Black Friday you buy gifts. On Black Monday you dump coaches. I don't get it. So, then I think that's what it's going to depend on, what the candidates are. I mean, it's like it's like trying to gauge free agency right now. You know, everybody's contract is, you know, we know they're going to expire eventually, and people try to guess what the free agents that people will go after, and then March, whatever rolls around, and some of the best guys are already off the market because they were re-signed by their clubs. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Chip Kelly could wind up coaching in a different place, maybe with a proven general manager. So, you know, you had a situation. What also makes this very interesting is that you had a head coach in Andy Reid that was one of the longest tenured head coaches around the league. And then suddenly he was gone, and here's a guy who didn't last through his third season.
Let me ask you this question. A lot of people in this area don't know who Tom Donahoe is. Can you tell people a little bit about who Tom Donahoe is and where he comes from? Because a lot of people hear, oh, he was with the Steelers, he was with the Bills, but most people have no idea what he was actually doing with those teams.
Yeah, he was a very accomplished personnel guy, mostly with the Steelers. That's really kind of, and he goes back to the Bill Cowher days. And I think even a little before. He's kind of been out of the spotlight for a number of years, and that's why I think people have kind of – and actually, you said it perfectly, inadvertently. Most people don't know his name is Tom Donahoe. It's not Tom Donahue, okay? And I'm not saying that to take a swipe or anything like that, but it's kind of like what Chuck Noll and Chuck Knox used to go through. Two great coaches, but a lot of times people would think Chuck Knox was the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, not Chuck Noll. So – no, I actually got the opportunity to work with Tom at ESPN 1 year during the draft. I found him to be very, very fascinating. But, I mean, he's a veteran personnel guy who knows how this works. And it should give you an idea that they're going to look for maybe an experienced guy and maybe some guys that have worked with Tom Donahoe in the past.
What do you think that Tom brings to the table that, you know, people have said that Howie Roseman, he's really great with a cap. He's really kind of more of an analytics guy. But Tom is more of like a personnel guy. Do you think that's a very good marriage for the Eagles?
Yeah, well, there you go. Very perfect. Howie Roseman is good with the cap. Tom Donahoe is good with the helmet. And the helmet is a little harder than the cap, wouldn't you say?
Just a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, not only I don't even mean that in the skill set. I'm talking about literally a helmet is harder than a cap.
Yeah, exactly.
No, Tom is a personnel guy, and in this day and age, okay. I mean, I want to say Tom goes back to the early '90s with the Steelers. Yeah. I think he was there even before there was NFL free agency. I might be dead wrong, but I think he was there before there was free agency, which didn't really begin in the NFL until 1993. The cap kicked in 1994. So it's a different age now, okay? And I think you want to bring in I think the NFL hierarchies, there was a tendency there for a little while, Josh, of trying to hire coaches who did not have NFL head coaching experience, and now I think people are looking kind of more for experience. I mean, for instance, if by chance Sean Payton gets let go in New Orleans and he's been there 10 years, and they've been miserable 3 of the last 4 years, it's not going to take long for him to get a gig. I don't think whatsoever. I mean, he has coordinator experience, he has head coaching experience. I think that's what some guys are looking for. And listen, this business is like any other business. Okay, if you went off and started your own radio station, you would probably work with the same producers that you like to work with, the same talent you like to work with, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what probably Tom Donahoe is going to bring in people he trusts.
We're talking with Russell Baxter here on 97.3 ESPN. You can follow him online. His Twitter handle is Bax Football Guru, is BAX, Bax Football Guru. He also writes for Bleacher Report. Let's transition to another team in the NFC East. The Eagles are playing the Giants this week. Obviously, there's a lot of swirling around Tom Coughlin about his future. Realistically, how much of the Giants' problems is really Coughlin, and how much of it is really the GM?
Well, it's interesting because the Giants, remember, they won the Super Bowl in 2011. And Jerry Reese, the last 2 or 3 years, even though they have drafted Josh, they've done a lot more with free agency, I would say, like the last 3 years than I've ever seen them do before. The Giants, I would say the Giants, the Packers, the Ravens, the Steelers, usually traditionally very quiet during free agency. They like to build through the draft. The Giants, for the most part, built through the draft and undrafted free agents as well. The Giants have leaned more on free agency the last 2 or 3 years, and I think it's hurt them, especially on the defensive side of the ball. To see them without a pass rush, to see them currently, think about it, the New York Giants are dead last in the NFL in defense. They are dead last in the NFL in pass defense. Okay? When they were winning Super Bowls and beating the Patriots in Super Bowl 42 and 46, Eli had his throws. We all know that. Eli was the MVP both times, but we know who won those games as far as the tone. The tone was set by the defensive line, beating up Tom Brady twice with that pass rush, and then keeping that team alive. There is no pass rush. They brought back Steve Spagnuolo this year, who was part of the 2007 team. That's why he got a head coaching job, because of the job he did with the 2007 New York Giants. And sadly for Steve, his career has never kind of rebounded since he became head coach of the Rams and failed there. He was the defensive coordinator in New Orleans in 2012. I bring up that because that was the year Sean Payton was suspended. That Saints team gave up the most yards in one season in the history of the National Football League. And now 3 years later, Steve Spagnuolo is the architect of the last-ranked defense. It's almost as if he just doesn't have the right players. I can't believe he fell off that much as a coach. But when you have Justin Tuck and Michael Strahan and O.C. Umenyiora and all those pass rushers that they used to have, and you don't really have them anymore, it changes the dynamic of your team on defense.
And that kind of gets back to Coughlin because of the fact that a lot of people, they're trying to dump the water on the head of Coughlin, in the negative sense because of the fact that this is the team's not playing well. But Coughlin is doing the best he can with, let's be honest, probably one of the poorest put together rosters in the NFL.
Well, I think what has hurt Tom Coughlin this year opposed to other years, and he's the only head coach I know to be fired 3 times in one season and still win the Super Bowl. Because the critics in New York are very, very harsh when it comes to him. Even the years that they were successful. Remember what their 2 Super Bowl runs were like, too, Josh. A 10-16 and the only 9-17 never won the Super Bowl. That Super Bowl team gave up more points than it scored during the year. They had 2 years where they got hot. People forget, as much as we like to point out playoff failures, and Eli and Peyton, and who has the better playoff record? Yes, Eli Manning has an 8-3 playoff record under Tom Coughlin. They went 4-0 in the playoffs in 2007. They went 4-0 in the playoffs in 2011, and he was 1-out every other time. Okay? So they got hot at the right times. That's a credit to the whole team. But Tom Coughlin, I think because maybe the combination of age and the way he handles things, people have always kind of been a little down on him. They looked at, how he got the Jaguars close and a couple of times and didn't win it there. The thing to me that's interesting about this year opposed to the other years has been the fourth quarter meltdowns by this team. And it is on the surface, at least, it's either been Coughlin or Manning in the fourth quarter have made some very poor decisions in terms of clock management.
Let's look around a little bit at the rest of the NFL right now. Obviously, the Redskins have won the NFC East. The NFC is pretty much set playoff-wise, but some of the seeding is kind of subject to different matchups. If we could swing over to the NFC North, obviously the Packers and the Vikings winner wins the division, but it seems like to me the Packers and the Vikings are teams going totally different directions. The Vikings seem to be on the uptick, and the Packers, they may have one of the worst offensive lines for any team heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, losing Baxter the other day really hurt them. They gave up 9 sacks, 8 on Aaron Rodgers. He fumbled twice. They had 2 of them picked up. He fumbled 3 times and lost 2 of them, and they were running to the end zone for touchdowns. It's been an uneven year for the Packers, who, remember, at one time were, 6-0? And now they're 4-5 since then?
Yeah.
So, we've seen that with a couple of teams. The Broncos are a 500 team since being 7-0. The Patriots are 2-3 in their last 5 games after being 10-0. Shows you the long rigors of a season. Meanwhile, the Arizona Cardinals seems like they're getting stronger as the year goes on. This is a very peculiar spot for the Packers, who have won the division the last 4 years, and they're at home on Sunday night, and you would think, that's good. But They lost to Detroit at home this year. They lost to Chicago at home this year. When you don't have the guys in the offensive line, you bring up a great point. When you don't have those guys, and we don't like to talk about offensive line because you don't get too many points in Madden for them, I guess.
There's no fantasy stats for offensive line, yet the offensive line is responsible for allowing the quarterbacks to stay upright to get all those fantasy points.
Right, yeah, no fantasy points, but the reality is if you don't have a good offensive line, your quarterback doesn't do much. So this is a tricky spot for them. It is kind of funny. I think about this all the time. The Packers have won the NFC North 4 years in a row. The last time the Packers didn't win the division, they were too busy winning the Super Bowl.
Interesting. Very interesting. Do you think that Packers team, though, has a chance to make a run at the Super Bowl this year? Or you think...
Well, I think they have a chance in making a run, but I think they're going to run into a stop sign as constituted right now because Carolina and Arizona almost seem like they're on a collision course. And, dare I say, I know Carolina's 14-1, and this is no swipe at them whatsoever. But defensively, they haven't played great. And they've leaned on Cam Newton the last couple of weeks. And I said Arizona went into Philadelphia and destroyed the Eagles and then just destroyed the Packers. I mean, Arizona, this is a Cardinals franchise that goes back to 1920. They had never won more than 11 games in any season. They're now 13-2. They have a shot at home field. They're on the verge of scoring 500 points this year. Bruce Arians has done an absolutely amazing job. And it's, you almost feel like it's between him and maybe Mike Zimmer and Ron Rivera for Coach of the Year. And how amazing would it be if Rivera or Arians won it again this year? Because Arians was Coach of the Year in 2012, Rivera in 2013, Arians last year. Can you imagine we have an Arians Rivera?
Some people might call that a conspiracy at some point.
Well, I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's something wrong here. 11 of the 12 voters, something like that, whatever.
We're talking with Russell Baxter here on 97.3 ESPN. You can read his columns over on Bleacher Report. Speaking of Coach of the Year, you forgot to mention the guy who's my Coach of the Year, and I know it's maybe not the most popular thing in the world, but what Todd Bowles has done in New York, taking a roster that a lot of people were wondering, are they ever going to be more than a sub-500 team? They're on the cusp of the playoffs with the guy who started the season as the backup quarterback and a lot of parts that he's found a way to put together.
Yeah, and listen, I don't think you can underestimate the arrival of Brandon Marshall. The trade they made gave up a fifth-round pick to get Brandon Marshall, who has, let's just throw some stuff out there. He has 9 100-yard receiving games this year. The Jets as a team last season had 4. He has 13 touchdowns on his own this year. Jets wide receivers last year had 8. You look what Ryan Fitzpatrick has done, Eric Decker. They are a more formidable offense, and it takes a lot of pressure off their defense. And at times the defense hasn't been stifling this year at all. They kind of went through that slump. They can beat it at times with the pass. LaShawn McCoy had a big afternoon against them. Or I should say evening, the Thursday evening game. And they're going to run into the Bills running game again this week. He's certainly in the running. I don't want you to think I'm downplaying him at all. And how ironic would it be that Todd Bowles last year, who was named the first ever NFL Assistant Coach of the Year, which was the case last year when he was the defensive coordinator of the Arizona Cardinals, maybe he graduates to Coach of the Year.
Very interesting. Speaking of the AFC, we're talking about the Jets. What about what's going on with the Chiefs? Obviously, the Chiefs have the former Eagles head coach, Andy Reid, who has seemed to maybe learned from his mistakes he made in Philadelphia and has been able to make the Chiefs into a viable playoff contender.
Well, he did make the Eagles into a viable playoff contender. But, I know he had his failures in the NFC Championship game, but it wasn't like they were 4-12 all the year. And by the way, did you notice how things kind of came apart for the Eagles his last 2 years there? They're another team that's usually drafted very, very well, and they went overboard a little on free agency, and it comes back to bite you.
Right.
Okay? If you have a system, keep the system. And, these teams like the Pats and the Packers and the Steelers, they've had the same systems for years. They've had the same general managers for years. Continuity is so important in this league. Andy Reid, I mean, they win on opening day. They lose 5 in a row. Now they've won 9 in a row. By the way, how funny is it? Andy Reid's first 9 games in Kansas City 2 years ago, they were 9-0. So, he knows something, I guess, about nines. Let's see if he closes this out. They can still win the division. They're hot. They play better defense than they have played in a couple of years in Kansas City, and I'm talking about overall defense. Even though they gave up a lot of rushing yards to the Cleveland Browns this week, a lot of that by Johnny Manziel. I understand that. So, the AFC is pretty stacked, but at the same time, a lot of the teams that were on fire early in the season in the AFC have kind of cooled down. Remember, we had all those 6-0s at one time, and, the Bengals, the Patriots, for all different reasons, have cooled off.
We've been talking with Russell Baxter. You can read his columns over on Bleacher Report. One more question for you before I let you go. Kind of looking ahead to the NFL playoffs, obviously some of the seeds haven't been set yet, but what are the 2 or 3 teams that you're looking at and you're saying, wow, this team, things line up right, can really make a run that maybe people aren't thinking about? Because people talk about, obviously, the Cardinals, people talk about the Panthers, people talk about all these different teams who are at the top of the league, but what are maybe a couple teams that you're saying, if things line up, they could really run roughshod?
Well, you look at, it sounds like you're trying to, you mean like a playoff, who's the playoff sleeper out there?
Right.
Well, I think the Jets kind of are, to be honest with you. I look at styles, and the style of football the Jets are playing, I think, is conducive to making a bit of a run. We have seen these teams get in the playoffs at 8-8 or 7-8-1 and win playoff games. To me, the Redskins are a little too dependent on Kirk Cousins as of right now. They're trying to get their running game a little more steady and back on track, but it's been slow. Their offensive line has come a long way this year. They'll say that. Seattle threw me a real curveball last week, losing at home to the Rams. I'm not saying they can't catch fire and do some damage in the playoffs. And who knows who's going to come out? Is Denver going to be a wild card, or are they going to be a division champion? Same thing with Kansas City. Does somehow the Jets get bumped and Pittsburgh gets in? I think it's funny because we all try to kind of, nail down that sleeper because in many years we have seen, like the sleeper succeed. But it's funny, the last 2 years, and correct me if I'm wrong, both number 1 seeds in each conference have gotten to the Super Bowl.
That's correct.
So for a long time it wasn't like that, but it has been lately.
Russell Baxter, again, you can follow him on Twitter at BAX Football Guru, Bax Football Guru. Really appreciate you coming on today on 97.3 ESPN.
You got it.
Have a good one.